The radio scream cut through the mountain silence like a blade through flesh. We're surrounded, 50-plus hostiles, need fire support now. Rachel Hartwell's eye pressed against the Schmidt and Bender scope. 860 meters down the slope, 12 men clustered in a dry riverbed. SEAL Team 7, trapped. 3 PKM machine gun positions had them bracketed in a perfect triangle. A kill box. Her breathing slowed, 2 heartbeats per second. The meditation they taught her 20 years ago at Quantico. Back when her hands didn't shake. Back when her right knee didn't feel like broken glass grinding against bone. The crosshairs settled on the enemy commander. A tall man in tactical black directing his fighters with hand signals. Professional. Too professional for insurgents. Wind. 12 miles per hour. Quartering from the northeast. Temperature 41 degrees. Humidity low. At this range, with her hand-loaded .300 Winchester Magnum, the bullet would drop 7.2 mils. Wind drift 2 mils right. She exhaled halfway. Held it. The world narrowed to the reticle, the target's chest, the space between heartbeats. Fired. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the man's tactical vest kick up dust. 6 inches left of center mass. The round sparked off a rock behind him. Miss! The commander dove for cover, his men scattered. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Rachel's hands trembled as she worked the bolt. The empty brass ejected with a metallic clink. 42 years old, 3 years retired, a bad knee that made her limp on cold mornings. This was why she'd walked away. Overwatch, where the hell is our support? The radio voice again, young, terrified, angry. She found another target, the machine gunner on the eastern ridge. 760 meters. She led his movement, compensated for the miss, for the rust, for 3 years of silence. This time the gunner's head snapped back. He dropped behind his weapon. The machine gun went silent. Rachel whispered into the darkness, "Target down." On the valley floor, the SEALs were moving, using the chaos, running for their lives. The title burned across her mind like a brand 72 hours earlier. The Montana cabin sat at the end of a dirt road that disappeared into pine forest. No neighbors for 6 miles. No sound except wind through the trees and the occasional crack of a branch weighted with snow. Rachel Hartwell stood at the kitchen window, watching the approach. The black SUV climbed the switchback slowly, carefully, the way someone drives when they know they're not welcome, but they're coming anyway. She'd been alone here for 3 years. 3 years since Connor Blake died on a ridge in the Sierra Nevadas, while she listened on the radio from 800 meters away. Too far to help. Too far to do anything but hear him take his last breath. The photo on the mantel showed them together. Connor grinning in his ghillie suit, arm around her shoulders. Afghanistan 2019. Before everything went wrong, before Ghost Sight, before the mission that killed him. The SUV stopped. A man stepped out. Tall, gray-haired, moving with the economy of someone who'd spent 30 years in uniform. Colonel James Garrett, her former commander. The man who'd signed her retirement papers without argument when she'd asked. Rachel opened the door before he could knock. "Colonel?" "Rachel." He looked older, lines deeper around his eyes. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered, removing his jacket. Underneath, civilian clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, but he wore them like a uniform. "Coffee, please." She poured 2 cups. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd cleaned her rifles for 3 years, where she'd eaten alone, where she'd read Connor's last letter so many times the paper had started to fall apart at the creases. Garrett didn't waste time. "Ghost Sight needs you. One last mission." Rachel laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Ghost Sight terminated my employment 3 years ago, honorably. Remember?" "I remember. I also remember why." The kitchen went quiet. Outside, a raven landed on the porch railing, black wings against white snow. "I'm retired, Colonel. Find someone younger, someone whose knee doesn't sound like gravel in a coffee can, someone who can still make a shot under pressure." Garrett reached into his jacket, pulled out a tablet, tapped it awake. "SEAL Team 7, 12 men. Intelligence assessment says they're hitting a weapons cache in the Sierra Nevadas. Routine reconnaissance in force. They go in tomorrow at 0600. He slid the tablet across the table. Rachel looked at the screen. Mission briefing, satellite imagery, compound layout, approach routes, extraction points. Her blood turned cold. She knew this compound, not this specific one, but the pattern, the layout, the tactical setup. Where did this intel come from? Classified source, high-level informant. Command says it's solid. Rachel's finger traced the map. Eastern approach. Single file ingress. No alternate routes. Compound overlooks from 3 ridgelines. Perfect fields of fire. You see it too. This is Connor's mission. Her voice came out flat, dead. This is the exact tactical setup that killed him 3 years ago. Garrett nodded slowly. Down to the grid coordinates. Different locations, same pattern. Rachel stood, walked to the window. The Raven was still there, watching her with black eyes that reflected nothing. Draven, we don't have proof. We never have proof. That's how he operates. She turned back. General Marcus Draven. He set up Connor's mission. Fed us intelligence that put us on separate ridges. Connor walked into an ambush while I was 800 meters away with a perfect view and no way to help. The after-action report said, the after-action report was a lie. Rachel's hands clenched. I filed warnings, detailed warnings. The terrain was wrong. The intelligence didn't match ground truth. Command overruled me. Connor died. Then the reports got sanitized. Suddenly I hadn't warned anyone. Suddenly it was my fault for not detecting the threats. Garrett's jaw tightened. I know. I've seen the originals, before they were altered. Rachel sat back down. Then you know this is Draven finishing what he started. If SEAL Team 7 goes in tomorrow, they're dead. All 12 of them. That's why I'm here. Send someone else. I'm 42 years old with a bum knee and hands that shake when I try to thread a needle. I haven't fired a rifle in 3 years. I'm not the operator you need. Garrett leaned forward. You're the only one who knows Draven's playbook. You're the only one who's seen this pattern before. And you're the best long-range observer I've ever worked with, rust or no rust. I missed Connor's death by being too far away. I don't want to miss someone else's by being too slow. So don't miss. Garrett's voice softened. Rachel, Connor died because Draven split you two up. Because he knew you'd see through the setup if you were together. He isolated you, made you helpless. You've been isolated ever since. Alone in this cabin. Alone with fishy the guilt. Maybe it's time to stop being alone. Rachel looked at the photo on the mantle. Connor's smile. The way he'd always believed in her. Even when she didn't believe in herself. If this is Draven, she said quietly, he's targeting Ghost Site. Again. The SEALs are just bait. He's after the observer. I know. He's after me. I know that too. Rachel stood, walked to the closet, pulled out the case she hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside the Macmillan TAC-50, 11 pounds of precision machine steel and carbon fiber. Custom built to her specifications. Free-floating barrel. Schmidt and Bender scope with mil-dot reticle. Suppressor hand-fitted to reduce both sound and muzzle flash. She ran her hand along the barrel, cold, familiar. Like greeting an old friend who'd seen you at your worst and never judged. I'm slow, she said. I'm rusty. My knee is shot. I'll need support. You'll have it. And if I'm right about Draven, then we finish what Connor started. Rachel loaded the rifle case into her truck. 3 years of dust covered the tactical gear. She'd thought she was done with all this. Done with the mountains. Done with the killing. Done with watching good men die, while she looked through a scope from a safe distance. But Connor's voice echoed in her memory, the last coherent thing he'd said before the blood loss took him. Not your fault, Rach. System failed. Don't let it make you afraid. She'd been afraid anyway, for 3 years. Maybe it was time to stop. The C-130 bucked through turbulence at 12,000 feet. Rachel sat alone in the cargo bay checking her gear for the 10th time. Rifle. 40 rounds across 4 magazines. Not enough for a sustained engagement, but Ghost Site protocol assumed you never engaged. Observe and report, that's all. The loadmaster gave her the 5-minute warning. Rachel stood, checked her parachute, the knee brace under her tactical pants, the medication in her vest pocket. 42 years old. This used to be easy. The ramp dropped. Wind screamed into the cargo bay. 10,000 feet below, the Sierra Nevadas stretched out like broken teeth. Snow-capped peaks, dense forest, and somewhere down there, a compound where 12 men would walk into a trap unless she stopped it. She jumped. The free fall lasted 30 seconds. Wind roared. The ground rushed up. At 4,000 feet, she pulled the chute. The canopy deployed with a crack that rattled her teeth. She steered toward the drop zone, a clearing 3 miles north of the compound, far enough to avoid detection, close enough to reach the observation post before dawn. The landing was rough. Her knee buckled on impact. She went down hard, rolling to absorb the momentum. Pain lanced up her leg. She bit back a curse. 3 years ago, she would have landed and been moving in 30 seconds. Now it took her 2 minutes just to stand. Rachel gathered the chute, buried it under deadfall. Checked her compass. 3 miles. Uphill. In the dark. With a knee that felt like someone was driving nails through the joint. She started walking. By 0300, she was in position, a shallow depression between two boulders at 8,000 feet. The ghillie suit broke up her silhouette against the scree. From 100 yards away, she was just another shadow among the rocks. Through the scope, the compound looked exactly like the intelligence briefing had promised. Cluster of buildings in a valley basin. Vehicles parked in tactical spacing. Men moving with the practiced economy of trained fighters. But something was wrong. Rachel's instincts had been screaming at her for the past hour. The pattern of movement below didn't match insurgent behavior. Too organized, too disciplined. The vehicles were civilian models, but they moved in tactical formations. The fighters carried themselves like operators, not militia. She counted heads. 53. All male. All fit, all moving with purpose. Her radio crackled. Encrypted channel. Command frequency. Overwatch actual. This is tactical operations. Confirm your position. Colonel Garrett's voice. Calm, professional, but she could hear the tension underneath. TACOPS Overwatch Actual, established at Grid November Victor 7329, visual on Valley approach. Something feels wrong about this insertion. A pause, then another voice, clipped. Official, the operations officer. Overwatch Actual, your concern is noted. Intelligence assessment is solid. SEAL element is greenlit for insertion. Garrett's voice came back. Careful, measured. TACOPS, I'm reading the same intel you are, but ground truth doesn't match. Request hold on insertion until we can verify target composition. Negative Overwatch Actual. Mission timeline is fixed. SEAL Team 7 is wheels up in 15 minutes. Rachel closed her eyes. She'd heard this conversation before. Different voices. Different operation. Same dismissal of ground truth in favor of intelligence built by analysts who'd never seen combat. That conversation had killed Connor. She keyed her mic. Against protocol. Against orders. TACOPS, this is Ghost Site. I have eyes on target. Recommend abort. Repeat, recommend abort. Enemy force composition does not match briefing. Silence on the net. Then, Ghost Site, you are observe and report only. Your tactical assessment is noted but not actionable. SEAL element proceeds as planned. The radio went dead. Rachel adjusted her position, easing pressure on her left hip. The rifle rested on its bipod perfectly still. 6 hours in the same spot. Her back ached. Her knee throbbed. Her hands were starting to go numb from the cold. 42 years old. 20 years ago, she could have stayed in position for 3 days without complaint. She scanned the compound again. Methodical, thorough, looking for the thing her gut was screaming about. Then she saw it. Communications antenna. Military grade. Encrypted satellite uplink. Not insurgent equipment. Not even militia grade. This was professional hardware. She zoomed in. The men below were carrying HK-416s, American-made rifles, suppressed, night vision mounts on their helmets. Level 4 body armor, not insurgents, contractors. Her radio crackled again. Different frequency this time, not encrypted for Ghost Site. She wasn't supposed to be monitoring it, but she'd learned long ago that rules killed soldiers. The voice was American, Midwest accent, clear, professional. Team 3, this is command. Primary objective is Ghost Site elimination. Secondary objective is SEAL element. Sanitization protocol is in effect. No survivors. Rachel's breath stopped. Ghost Site elimination. They knew she was here. This wasn't a trap for the SEALs. This was a trap for her. The SEALs were just bait. The helicopter came in low and fast. A Black Hawk flying nap of the earth through the valley, using terrain to mask its approach. Rachel watched it through her scope. Oh, 5:47, 13 minutes early. The bird flared hard, touching down for exactly 8 seconds. 12 figures fast roped out. Hit the ground in tactical formation. The helicopter was gone before the last man's boots touched dirt. SEAL Team 7 was on the ground. Rachel watched them move through her scope. Professional, disciplined, beautiful in their coordination. Staggered column, covering sectors, moving with the fluid grace of men who'd trained together for years. They had no idea they were walking into hell. She counted her ammunition again. 32 rounds. 40 rounds would have been better, but she traveled light. Mistake number 1 in a mission that was about to cost lives. The enemy let the SEALs get 100 meters into the valley before springing the trap. The first burst of gunfire came from the eastern ridgeline, PKM machine gun. Russian-made but ubiquitous in conflict zones. The distinctive hammering of 7.62 rounds at 600 rounds per minute. The SEAL team reacted instantly, dropping into cover, returning fire, assessing the threat. Then the western ridge opened up, then the southern ridge. Rachel watched it happen with the detached precision of a sniper's eye. 3 machine gun positions, interlocking fields of fire. The SEALs were caught in a triangle with nowhere to go. They found what cover they could. Rocks, shallow depressions, but the enemy had the high ground in superior numbers. The radio exploded with voices. Contact east, heavy machine gun fire. Contact west, multiple hostiles. We're bracketed, they've got us in a kill box. Hammer 1, this is Hammer 2-1. We need immediate air support. We are surrounded and taking fire from 3 positions. Hammer 2-1, Hammer 1. I copy your traffic, requesting fire mission now. Rachel could see what the men on the ground couldn't. The enemy force was at least 50 fighters, well-armed, well-positioned, moving with tactical precision, tightening the noose. In 10 minutes, maybe less, the SEAL team would be overrun. She had a decision to make. Follow protocol. Observe and report. Let 12 men die while she took notes from a safe distance. Keep her career. Keep her honor. Keep her hands clean. Or break every rule. Reveal her position. Compromise ghost site. End her career. But maybe save 12 lives. Connor's voice echoed in her memory. The last thing he'd said before the blood loss took him. Don't let the system make you afraid to trust yourself. She'd trusted the system when Connor died. She'd followed orders, filed reports, played by the rules. The system had failed. She wouldn't make that mistake again. Rachel's finger moved from the trigger guard to the trigger. Her breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped to 52 beats per minute. The meditation techniques they'd taught her at the schoolhouse in Nevada, the place that didn't officially exist. She found the enemy commander in her scope, the same tall man from before, standing exposed on the eastern ridge, directing his fighters with hand signals. Confident, professional, range 760 meters, wind 12 miles per hour quartering from the northeast, temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity low, bullet drop at this range 7.3 mils. Wind drift 2 mils right, but she'd already missed him once. Her hands were shaking, her knee was on fire. 3 years of rust coated every movement. She centered the reticle on his chest, adjusted for wind and elevation. The crosshairs settled with the absolute stillness that came from 10,000 hours of training. But it wasn't enough, not anymore. Not at 42 with a bad knee and hands that trembled. So she adjusted again. Not for the wind, for herself. For the miss she knew was coming. She aimed 2 inches left of center mass, compensating for the shake she couldn't control. Rachel exhaled halfway, held it. The world narrowed to the scope, the target, the space between heartbeats. She pressed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The suppressor reduced the sound to a sharp crack instead of a thunderous boom. But it still echoed off the valley walls. Through the scope, she watched the commander's chest explode. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings, dead before his body hit the rocks. The effect on the enemy force was immediate. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Men looked around, trying to identify where the shot had come from. The disciplined assault faltered. Rachel was already working the bolt, chambering another round. 31 left. She found her next target. The machine gunner on the eastern ridge, the one pouring the most effective fire onto the SEAL positions. He was partially concealed behind a rock barricade, but she could see his head and shoulders when he rose to fire. Range 820 meters. Same wind, same temperature, different angle. She waited, patient. The machine gunner rose to adjust his aim. Rachel fired. The gunner jerked sideways. His weapon clattered away. The machine gun went silent. 30 rounds, third shot. The spotter on the western ridge, radio in hand, calling corrections for mortar fire. Range 880 meters. The wind had shifted slightly. She compensated. The spotter's radio call ended abruptly when the bullet found him. 29 rounds. The SEAL team's radio traffic changed, confusion mixing with desperate hope. What the hell? Where's that coming from? Sniper, we've got sniper support. That's not one of ours, wrong angle. I don't care who it is. They just gave us breathing room. Rachel keyed her mic, not on ghost site frequency. She switched to the SEAL team's tactical net. They'd detect her transmission, but they wouldn't be able to identify her. Hammer 1, this is Overwatch. Silence. Then a voice, cautious but controlled. Overwatch, identify yourself. What unit are you with? Negative. I'm someone who lost her partner to this exact setup 3 years ago. You have 8 minutes before they adjust to my position and start suppressing me. Move northeast bearing 045 200 meters. There's a wadi that provides hard cover. Move now or you're all dead. Another pause. She could hear him calculating, weighing the risk of trusting an unknown voice against the certainty of being overrun. Overwatch, we're moving to your recommended position. What's your ammunition status? Rachel scanned the valley, counting targets, calculating how long she could maintain pressure. Low enough that you need to move fast. Copy. Hammer elements, you heard. Overwatch, we're moving to the wadi northeast bearing 045. Overwatch, if you're out there, we need you to keep their heads down for the next 5 minutes. Copy that. Hammer 1, I'll give you what I can. Rachel settled back into her rifle. The SEALs were moving now, using the chaos she'd created, but the enemy was adapting. She could see fighters starting to coordinate again, organizing into fire teams, beginning a systematic sweep toward her general position. They were coming for her. She fired again, and again, each shot precise, each shot buying the SEALs another few seconds. 29 rounds left, 28, 27, and somewhere in the valley below, 12 men were running for their lives. Through the scope, Rachel watched the SEALs reach the wadi. They disappeared into the cut in the terrain, finally gaining solid cover. Not safe, just safer. 27 rounds remained, approximately 45 enemy fighters. The arithmetic of survival never worked in a sniper's favor, but Rachel had stopped caring about math the moment she'd fired that first shot. The enemy force was splitting, 25 maintaining pressure on the SEAL position, 20 turning toward the ridgeline, toward her. They triangulated her general position. Now they were hunting. Rachel shifted left, a low crawl across 30 meters of broken scree. The ghillie suit snagged on volcanic rock, tore, left green threads behind like breadcrumbs for anyone smart enough to track. Her knee protested every movement, not the dull ache of overuse. Something sharper, wronger, like bone grinding against cartilage that shouldn't exist anymore. The brace was holding barely, but she could feel the joint swelling inside the nylon compression. 20 years ago, this displacement would have taken 45 seconds. Today, it took 3 minutes. Every second was a second the enemy gained. She reached a cluster of boulders, settled in, controlled her breathing through the pain, found targets, a fighter ascending the eastern approach, a K-47 held at low ready, moving with the confidence of someone who thought the sniper had retreated farther than she actually had. 420 meters, almost intimate range for the TAC-50. Rachel's finger found the trigger, the familiar 2-pound pull. The rifle spoke. The fighter dropped mid-stride. 26 rounds. But even suppressed and even hidden behind ghillie netting, and Rock that shot had announced her new position to anyone watching. Bullets began impacting her cover. Not accurate fire, suppressive, keeping her head down while teams maneuvered closer. She couldn't stay. Rachel grabbed the rifle and moved again, faster this time, ignoring the knee. Because pain was temporary and dead was permanent. Rounds cracked overhead, one so close she felt the pressure wave against her cheek. Another kicked dust into her eyes. She dove behind an outcropping, came up scanning, found 2 targets, fired. The first went down. 25 rounds, adjusted, fired. The second fighter twisted fell. 24 rounds. But now 3 more appeared, closing from the south. Fire team formation, professionals. Colonel Garrett's voice crackled over the command net. Ghost site Overwatch actual. I'm inbound to your sector. Grid November Victor 7542, 3 minutes out. Rachel keyed her mic while tracking the nearest threat. Negative Colonel, stay with SEAL element. Coordinate their extraction. The SEALs have Brennan. You need backup. I need you keeping them alive. A pause, then Garrett's voice harder. Already moving? This isn't a debate. She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him about Connor. About how she'd gotten her partner killed by not being in position. About how she wouldn't add Garrett's name to that list. But the 3 fighters were 40 meters out now. Too close for discussion. Rachel took the point man. Center chest. He fell without a sound. 23 rounds. The other 2 scattered. Professional training kicking in. They separated, flanking left and right. She took the left flanker next, a hurried shot. The round went high, caught him in the shoulder instead of center mass. He went down but didn't stay down. Started crawling toward cover. 22 rounds. The right flanker disappeared behind a rock spine. Rachel waited, counted heartbeats, controlled her breathing despite the adrenaline screaming through her system. 5 seconds, 10, 15. He popped up, exactly where she'd predicted. Rachel fired before his rifle came level. 21 rounds, she displaced again. Found a narrow ledge running behind a rock outcropping, barely wide enough for her shoulders. The rifle hung over the edge, supported by the bipod against stone. From here she had elevation, could see back toward her previous positions, could cover the approach routes. Voices carried on the wind. English. American accents. Close. Team 3 last confirmed position was grid 7538, spread out 50-meter intervals. She's wounded and slow. We find her, we end this. Rachel pressed herself flat against the ledge. Didn't breathe. Became stone and shadow and nothing human. 4 fighters appeared below, moving in a search pattern, checking her old positions, looking for blood, for brass, for any indication of which direction she'd gone. The team leader pointed. His men moved away from her ledge. Wrong direction. Rachel exhaled slowly. Let them get 30 meters out. Began calculating her next move. Then a 5th man appeared, older than the others, gray at the temples, moving differently. His eyes swept the terrain with the practiced discipline of someone who'd hunted human beings before. His gaze locked on her ledge, on the disturbed rock where she'd climbed up, on the slight depression in the dust that shouldn't exist in nature. Their eyes met across 20 feet of empty air. Rachel's hand dropped to the knife on her vest. No time for the rifle, no room to maneuver it on the narrow shelf. The man's mouth opened. Drawing breath to shout, Rachel launched herself off the ledge. 4 feet down, her weight and momentum drove him backward into rock. The impact expelled all air from his lungs in a sound like a punctured tire. Her knife found his throat before he could draw another breath. The blade was sharp. The cut was deep. Hot arterial blood poured over her hand, over the rocks, over everything. The man's eyes went wide with understanding, then empty with nothing. Rachel rolled off the corpse, grabbed her rifle. The other 4 had heard the impact, were turning back, weapons coming up. She ran, a shambling, limping sprint that would have been laughable if it wasn't keeping her alive. The knee buckled twice. She caught herself on rock, kept moving. Bullets sparked around her feet. One tugged at her ghillie suit, another whined past her ear close enough to leave tinnitus. Rachel dove behind a boulder, came up with the rifle shouldered, found the nearest threat through the scope. Fired. The round went high, adrenaline affecting her fine motor control. 20 rounds. She forced herself to slow, to breathe, to remember 20 years of training that said speed was nothing without accuracy. Found the same target, led his movement by half a body width, squeezed the trigger with the gentle pressure of a lover's touch. He dropped. 19 rounds. The remaining 3 went to ground, started flanking, 1 left, 1 right, 1 staying center to fix her position. Professional tactics. These weren't insurgents. These were operators. Rachel's hand went to her vest. 1 M67 fragmentation grenade, 5-second fuse, casualty radius 5 meters, effective radius 15. She pulled the pin, counted 1 Mississippi, threw toward the right-hand flanker. The grenade arced through mountain air, bounced once, twice, detonated. The concussion rolled across the ridge like thunder compressed into a fist. The flanker's scream cut off with surgical precision. The left flanker broke cover, running, smart enough to recognize when the tactical situation had deteriorated beyond recovery. Rachel tracked him. 800 meters of practice made the lead automatic. Muscle memory older than conscious thought. Fired. He stumbled, went down hard, tried to crawl. Rachel fired again. 17 rounds. The center man was still out there, hiding, waiting for her to show herself. Rachel scanned through the scope, looking for any indication, any movement, any mistake. There, a rifle barrel protruding 3 inches past a rock edge. The fighter thought he was concealed, thought the ghillie suit covering his weapon made him invisible. It would have worked on someone less experienced. Rachel aimed 6 inches behind where the barrel disappeared, where a human body would have to be to hold that weapon at that angle, where center mass should be. Fired through the rock. The .300 Winchester Magnum punched through volcanic stone like it was drywall. On the other side, a man made a sound that wasn't quite a scream. 16 rounds. The ridge went quiet except for wind and the distant crack of Garrett's M40. Rachel slumped against the boulder. Her hands were shaking. Blood from the throat-cut fighter still wet on her knife hand, starting to dry, starting to smell like copper and meat. Her knee was swelling inside the brace. She could feel it. Tight, hot, Wrong. The radio crackled. Garrett's voice, calm despite everything. Ghost site, Overwatch actual. I'm in position. Grid November Victor 7542. I have visual on valley floor in your last known. Rachel keyed her mic, controlled her breathing enough to speak without gasping. Copy actual. Be advised, enemy conducting organized sweep of my sector. 15 to 20 hostiles remaining in the hunting party. Confirmed, seeing movement on eastern approach. 3 fire teams. You need to displace west. Rachel looked west. Steep terrain. Loose scree that would slide under weight. With her knee, she'd cover maybe 50 meters before the joint gave out completely. Negative. I displace west. I lose line of sight on SEAL position. They're still taking fire. Then I'll cover SEALs. You get clear. Colonel, with respect, you've got an M40. Great rifle. Not enough reach for the shots we need. I've got the TA-50. I maintain Overwatch. You provide supporting fire on sweep teams. A pause. She could hear him calculating, weighing tactical necessity against the fact that he outranked her and genuinely didn't want her dead. Copy. I'll engage eastern approach. You maintain Overwatch on SEAL position. But Rachel, when I say displace, you displace. Understood? Understood. She didn't mean it, but sometimes you told people what they needed to hear. Rachel found a new position. Higher, better angle on the wadi where the SEALs were dug in. She could see muzzle flashes, dust kicked up by incoming rounds. The controlled chaos of men fighting for their lives. Through her scope, she found targets. Methodical, professional, one at a time. A fighter with an RPG, setting up for a shot that would collapse the wadi's northern wall onto the SEAL positions. Rachel fired. The RPG gunner's head snapped back. 15 rounds. A spotter with a radio, calling coordinates for mortar fire that hadn't started yet, but would devastate light cover if it did. Rachel fired. The spotter dropped his radio. 14 rounds. A machine gunner trying to set up a PKM in the position she'd cleared earlier, trying to replace the dead with the living. Rachel fired. He joined his predecessor. 13 rounds. To her east, Garrett's M40 cracked. Different sound than her rifle. Sharper crack instead of deep boom. The sound of 7.62 NATO versus 300 Winchester Magnum. An enemy fighter on the eastern approach went down. Then another. 2 snipers. 2 sectors of fire. Coordinated, professional. The way it should work, it still wasn't enough. But maybe it didn't need to be enough. Maybe it just needed to be good enough until extraction arrived. The SEAL frequency crackled. Staff Sergeant Brennan's voice. Tense but controlled. Overwatch Hammer 1. We've got a developing situation. Enemy forces splitting. 20 moving on your position. 15 heading toward Overwatch actual. Remainder preparing to assault our position. They're coordinating for simultaneous action against all 3 elements. Rachel scanned the valley. Brennan was right. She could see the movement, the coordination, the enemy adapting to resistance, accepting casualties to execute combined arms. Copy Hammer 1. Time to extraction. Command says 45 minutes minimum. We need to hold. 45 minutes. Rachel had 13 rounds. Garrett probably had 30. The enemy had numbers and initiative and the patience of professionals. Hammer 1 Overwatch. Tell your men to keep their heads down. It's about to get loud. Copy. Give them hell. Rachel pressed her eye to the scope, found her next target. A fighter moving to enfilade the SEAL position. Let her breathing settle into the rhythm that preceded every shot. Fired. 12 rounds. The enemy kept coming. The SEAL frequency crackled again. Different voice. Younger. Carrying an edge that spoke of stress poorly hidden. Overwatch, identify yourself. What unit are you with? Rachel kept her eye on the scope, tracking another target. An enemy team leader directing his squad with hand signals. Negative? That's not an answer. She fired. The team leader dropped. 11 rounds. Hammer 1, tell your lieutenant to focus on his sector. My identity is irrelevant. A pause, then the young voice again. Different tone. Recognition mixed with something else. Anger, maybe. Or pain. I know that voice. Rachel Hartwell, Connor Blake's partner. Rachel's finger froze on the trigger. She keyed her mic. Affirm. Lieutenant Kyle Maddox. Connor and I went through selection together. We were swim buddies at BUD/S. The name was a fist to the gut. Maddox. Connor had mentioned him. The friend who'd carried him through Hell Week when hypothermia had set in. The brother who'd stood beside him at graduation. Lieutenant, we can discuss history after we survive this. Right now, I need you. Connor died because you weren't on his ridge. The accusation carried 3 years of weight, 800 meters away, too far to help when it mattered. Through the scope, Rachel saw movement. 2 fighters, Eastern Ridge, 640 meters. She fired. The round went wide. 10 rounds, adjusted. Fired again. 1 fighter down, 9 rounds. Lieutenant, I'm aware. Every day for 3 years, I'm aware. Are you? Maddox's voice came faster. Urgent. Because I hacked ghost site servers 6 months after Connor died. Found the original mission orders before they were altered. Rachel's hand tightened on the rifle. What are you talking about? Your mission brief said you and Connor would both be on the Northern Ridge. Standard 2-man team, overlapping fields of fire. But 12 hours before insertion, the orders changed. Split you up. Opposite ridges, 800 meters apart. The world tilted. Rachel's breathing stopped. The maps were modified, Maddox continued. I've got before and after. I've got the authorization signature. General Marcus Draven. 3 years of guilt crashed down. 3 years of believing she'd failed her partner. Draven split you deliberately, Maddox said quietly. This wasn't mission failure, Rachel. This was assassination. Connor knew something about ghost site funding irregularities. He was going to report it. Draven made sure he never got the chance. Rachel closed her eyes, opened them. The battlefield hadn't changed. The enemy was still advancing. The SEALs were still pinned, but everything else had shifted. Why tell me this now? Because this mission isn't random either. Draven's behind it. American contractors instead of insurgents. Sanitization operation. He wants everyone who knows the truth dead. That's you, Rachel. You were right 3 years ago. You filed warnings. They erased them, made Connor's death look like your fault to keep you quiet. The pieces locked together with terrible clarity. The identical tactical setup, the American accents on enemy comms, the professional movements. This wasn't counterinsurgency. This was murder. How many people know about these files? Just us. I haven't reported it. Didn't know who to trust. Keep it that way. If Draven finds out, I'm already dead, I know. A pause. But Rachel, you were right about everything. Connor died because Draven made sure you couldn't save him, not because you failed. The radio went quiet. Rachel wiped her eyes, forced focus through the scope. 9 rounds remaining. Approximately 30 enemy fighters. 43 minutes to extraction. The math still didn't work. But the mission had changed. This wasn't about following orders anymore. This was about survival. About witness protection without the protection. About making sure Draven didn't get away with it twice. Garrett's voice cut through her thoughts. Ghost site enemy force regrouping at grid November. Victor 7618. 20 hostiles. Preparing coordinated assault. Recommend we displace to Serpent's throat. Rachel pulled her tactical map. Found the location. Narrow ravine 2 kilometers north. Natural choke point. Defensible terrain. Copy. What's the plan? SEALs move first. I provide covering fire from current position. You displace to ravine entrance. Take elevated position for overwatch. Once SEALs are through, you cover their movement while I leapfrog to join you. 2 kilometers. Broken ground. Minimal cover. With her knee barely functional. Rachel keyed her mic. Joel, I'll slow the movement. Recommend I stay here. Cover SEAL displacement. You move with them. I'll follow once you're clear. Negative, you can't hold alone against 20. I've been alone for 3 years, Colonel. 20 minutes is nothing. The pause was longer this time. She could hear him wrestling with it. Tactics versus concern. Mission versus personal. How compromised is the knee? Functional from stable position, not functional for movement under fire. Rachel. Colonel, this is the mission. SEAL Team 7 reaches that ravine. You reach that ravine. I provide overwatch until you're clear. Then I displace. That's how it works. Another pause. Then quietly, Connor would tell you this is a bad call. Connor's not here. No, he's not. Ooh, Garrett's voice hardened with decision. 20 minutes. Not a second more. When I call displacement, you move. Even if you have to crawl. Understood. Understood. This time she meant it. The SEAL displacement began on schedule. 12 men flowing from the wadi in tactical bounds. Using terrain, moving with the fluid precision of thousands of hours training together. Rachel covered their movement, looking for threats through her scope. Found one. Enemy fighter on Western Ridge. Setting up to enfilade their route. 780 meters. Rachel fired. The fighter dropped. 8 rounds. Another threat. Eastern approach. RPG teams setting up. She took the gunner first. The assistant grabbed the weapon. Rachel took him second. 6 rounds. The enemy was reacting, shifting forces, trying to cut off the displacement. Rachel kept shooting, each round buying the SEALs another 50 meters of survival. 5 rounds. 4. 3. Garrett's M40 joined in, covering different sectors. 2 snipers coordinating fire, the way Connor had taught them both. The SEALs made good time, professional movement exploiting the chaos. Rachel's radio crackled. Overwatch Hammer 1, approaching ravine entrance, 30 seconds to cover. Copy, I've got your back trail. She scanned behind them, found 3 fighters attempting to flank. Engaged, dropped 2. The third went to ground behind a boulder. Adjusted aim, waited for him to move. He popped up to shoot. Rachel was already squeezing the trigger. 1 round left in the magazine. Hammer 1 inside the ravine. We're clear Overwatch. Good shooting. Garrett's voice came next. Ghost sight I'm displacing. Moving to join SEAL element. Your turn. Get moving. Rachel started to confirm. Started to say she was coming. Then she saw them. 5 fighters. Moving up the western approach. Fast. Professional. Heading directly toward her position with the purpose of men who knew exactly where their target was hiding. They'd found her. 90 seconds. Maybe less. Not enough time to displace with her knee. She'd be caught in the open. Easy target. She keyed her mic. Actual, I've got company. 5 hostiles, 90 meters out. I'm engaged. Break contact and move. Oh, negative. Too close. I engage, then displace. She didn't wait for response. Didn't have time. Rachel reloaded. Fresh magazine. 10 rounds. Settled the scope on the lead fighter. 200 meters. Almost too close for the scope's magnification. Fired. He went down. 9 rounds. The others scattered. Taking cover. They'd seen the muzzle flash. Knew her position. Bullets started impacting. Not suppressive anymore. Aim shots from men who knew where to shoot. Rachel crawled backward, dragging the rifle. The ghillie suit catching on every rock. Her knees screaming. Made it 10 meters. Found a depression. Rolled into it just as rounds sparked where she'd been. 2 fighters appeared on the ridge above. 40 meters. Too close for the rifle. Rachel dropped it. Drew her sidearm. Sig Sauer P226, 15 rounds. The first fighter saw her. Brought his AK up. Rachel fired twice. Center mass. Training overriding thought. He went down. The second dove for cover. Started shooting. Rounds cracked overhead. She couldn't stay. Couldn't return fire without exposing herself. Rachel holstered the SIG. Drew her knife. If they wanted close quarters, she'd give them close quarters. She used the depression, crawled through it, working around to the second fighter's flank. Every movement, agony. The knee wasn't just hurt anymore. Something inside had failed, structurally, permanently. The fighter was focused on her last position, firing controlled bursts, waiting. Rachel came up behind him, 6 feet, knife in hand. He sensed movement, started to turn. Her blade found his kidney. He gasped. Tried to scream. She covered his mouth, held him while he died. 2 down, 3 remaining. Rachel grabbed his AK-47, checked the magazine, 20 rounds, took 2 spares from his vest. Movement left. Another fighter, searching, careful. Rachel brought the AK up. The rifle felt wrong, unfamiliar, rougher than American weapons, but functional. She squeezed the trigger. The burst was longer than intended, 5 rounds instead of 3. The fighter went down, 2 left. Rachel crawled back to her rifle, left the AK. The TAC-50 was hers. She knew it, trusted it, made it another 20 meters downslope, toward better cover. Her knee gave out completely, just collapsed. 1 second bearing weight, the next she was on the ground with bone grinding on bone. She tried to stand, couldn't. The joint wouldn't support her, so she crawled. Behind her, the remaining fighters were calling to each other, coordinating. They knew she was hit, knew she was slow. They were hunting wounded prey. Rachel dragged herself behind a boulder, set up the rifle, 1 round in the magazine, 2 more magazines in her vest, 21 total. She'd make her stand here. Through the scope, she saw movement. 1 fighter, moving confidently, thinking she was helpless. Rachel centered the crosshairs, controlled her breathing through the pain. Fired. The fighter dropped. 20 rounds. Rachel worked the bolt, chambered another round. The final fighter was smarter. Stayed in cover. Patient. Minutes passed. Rachel waited, despite the pain, despite the knee, despite everything. Then she saw him, trying to flank. 70 meters. She tracked him, led his movement. Fired. Miss. The round went high, adrenaline and pain affecting her shot. 19 rounds. The fighter went to ground, started returning fire. Accurate, professional. Rounds sparking off her boulder. Rachel ducked, reloaded while covered. Fresh magazine, 10 rounds, 29 total. Came back up. The fighter had displaced. 40 meters now. Closing distance. Rachel found him, forced herself to breathe, to slow, to remember that speed meant nothing without accuracy. Fired. He went down hard, didn't move. The ridge went quiet. Rachel keyed her mic. Actual threats eliminated. Moving to your position. Copy. What's your condition? Ambulatory. The lie tasted like copper. Knees compromised, but I can move. She didn't mention the complete joint failure. Didn't mention she'd be crawling the entire kilometer. Rachel started moving, dragging herself across volcanic rock, the rifle across her back. Every meter a negotiation with pain. 1 kilometer to the ravine. At this pace, 30 minutes. Maybe more. She had 28 rounds. The enemy had at least 20 fighters still mobile. And somewhere ahead in a narrow ravine, 12 SEALs and 1 colonel were waiting for extraction that was still 35 minutes out. The arithmetic still didn't work. But Rachel had stopped caring about arithmetic when she'd fired that first shot. She crawled, and with every meter she thought about Connor, about 3 years of guilt that had never been hers, about Draven's lie, about the system that had broken her. Not anymore. If she died on this mountain, it wouldn't be alone, wouldn't be silent, wouldn't be for nothing. Rachel reached an overlook. Through her scope, she could see the ravine entrance. Garrett in position, SEALs setting defenses. And behind them, moving with tactical precision, 25 fighters preparing to assault. But one figure stood apart, directing the others. Tall, confident, tactical black. Rachel zoomed in. Her breath stopped. She knew that face. Captain Eric Sutton, Connor's former Delta teammate, the man who'd fed them false intelligence 3 years ago, who'd walked away while Connor bled, the man who'd killed her partner. Rachel's hands shook, not from pain, from rage 3 years compressed. She keyed her mic. Actual enemy commander identified, Eric Sutton, Connor's killer. Garrett's response was immediate. Confirmed visual. Confirmed, 820 meters. I'm taking the shot. Rachel, wait. Your position isn't stable. You need... I've waited 3 years, Colonel. She centered the crosshairs on Sutton's chest. The same chest that had worn the same uniform as Connor's. The same man who'd shaken Connor's hand before sending him to die. 820 meters. Wind 14 miles per hour. Temperature dropping. Her damaged knee making the platform unstable. Her hands shaking with emotion instead of cold. Every indicator said wait, said find better position, said control yourself. But Rachel was done waiting, done controlling, done with everything except this one shot. She fired. Through the scope, she watched the bullet kick rock 2 feet left. Sutton dove for cover. Disappeared. God damn it. 27 rounds. She worked the bolt. Scanned for Sutton. He was gone. Hidden. The opportunity lost. Garrett's voice came quiet over the radio. Disappointed but not surprised. That's why we wait, Rachel. She slumped behind the rifle. Blood from her cheek wound dripping onto the stock. Knee destroyed, hands still shaking, and somewhere below, Eric Sutton was alive. Because she'd rushed. Because she'd let 3 years of anger override 20 years of training. Because after everything, she'd made the amateur's mistake. Connor wouldn't have missed that shot. Connor would have waited, would have breathed, would have trusted his training. But Connor was dead, and Rachel was alone. Again. Rachel heard the voices before she saw them. 2 SEALs, moving up the slope toward her position. Overwatch, this is Hammer 2-3. We're coming to your position. Don't shoot us. She keyed her mic. Might of Hammer 2-3. I can move on my own. Colonel's orders, ma'am. He said extract you by force if necessary. Rachel tried to stand, put weight on the bad knee. It buckled immediately. She went down hard. The SEALs appeared. 2 young men in their 20s, hard faces under camouflage paint. They took one look at her knee and didn't ask permission. One grabbed her rifle. The other got an arm under her shoulders. Can you walk at all? Define walk. That's what I thought. He looked at his partner. Brennan's not going to like this. We're going to be slow. They half carried, half dragged her down the slope. Rachel bit back screams every time her knee moved. The joint was completely destroyed now. She could feel bone fragments grinding. Every step sent lightning up her spine. It took them 15 minutes to cover 400 meters. Staff Sergeant Tyler Brennan met them at the ravine entrance. The SEAL team leader, 36 years old, face like weathered granite, eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by anything. He looked at Rachel's knee, then at her face. How bad? I can still shoot from a stable position. That wasn't the question. Bad enough that I won't be running marathons. Not bad enough to stop working. Brennan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Get her to the elevated nest, eastern wall, 10 meters up. She'll have clear fields of fire on the ravine entrance and the approach beyond. The two SEALs carried her to the position, a natural shelf in the rock wall, just wide enough for her body and the rifle. Elevation gave her the angle she needed. The damaged knee didn't matter here. She could brace against stone, let the earth take the weight. They set her down. Propped her rifle on its bipod. Ammunition. 27 rounds total. One of the young SEALs pulled magazines from his vest. We're carrying extra 300 Winchester mag for our designated marksman. He's down with a shoulder wound. You can have his ammunition. He pressed 4 magazines into her hands. 20 rounds each, 80 rounds total. Plus her 27, 107 rounds. For the first time in hours, the math looked better. Thank you. Don't thank us yet. We might all be dead in 30 minutes. They left her in the nest. Rachel loaded a fresh magazine, checked her scope, controlled her breathing despite the pain. Below, the SEAL team was setting up defensive positions, claymore mines at the choke points, interlocking fields of fire, using the terrain the way it was meant to be used. Colonel Garrett appeared at the bottom of her position, looked up. How's the knee? Functional from here. Rachel. I'm not having this conversation again, Colonel. I can shoot. That's what matters. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Sutton's out there. I saw him rallying his men. Approximately 25 fighters preparing to assault this position. I know. I had the shot. I missed. Because you weren't stable. Because you let emotion override training. His voice wasn't harsh, just factual. Next time he shows, let me know. I'll take him. Rachel wanted to argue. Wanted to say Sutton was hers. That she'd earned the right to that kill through 3 years of guilt. But Connor's voice echoed in her memory. Trust your team. No one fights alone. Copy, she said quietly. Garrett moved to his own position. Rachel scanned the approaches through her scope. The enemy came 20 minutes later. They didn't charge blindly, didn't waste lives on a frontal assault. Instead, they used smoke grenades, rolled them into the ravine entrance. Within seconds, the narrow passage filled with colored fog. The enemy used the cover to advance. Professional, coordinated, moving in fire teams. Rachel couldn't see individual targets through the smoke, could only see shapes, shadows. She waited, patient, let them come into the kill zone. Brennan's voice carried across the ravine. Mines 1 and 2 on my mark. The 3-2-1 mark. The claymores detonated. The explosions were apocalyptic in the confined space. 700 steel balls per mine, traveling at 4,000 feet per second. The smoke turned red with blood mist. Screams echoed off the rock walls. The SEAL team opened fire. Disciplined bursts, controlled violence, not wasting ammunition, making every round count. The enemy advance faltered. Bodies piled at the choke point. The survivors took cover behind the dead, but they kept coming. Rachel engaged from her elevated position. The smoke was clearing enough to see targets. 3 fighters in rapid succession, a team leader, a radio operator, a fighter carrying an RPG, 104 rounds, 101, 98. The enemy was learning, using the bodies for cover, advancing in short rushes, accepting casualties to gain ground. A fighter appeared on the western wall, climbing, trying to flank the SEAL positions from above. Rachel swung her rifle, tracked him, fired. He fell 20 feet. Hit rock. Didn't move. 97 rounds. More climbers. The enemy was adapting. If they couldn't push through the choke point, they'd go over the walls. Rachel engaged. Methodical. Precise. Dropping climbers before they could gain purchase. But there were too many. She couldn't cover every approach. A young SEAL appeared on the western wall. Corporal Dylan Fletcher, 24 years old, baby-faced under the camouflage paint. He moved to intercept the climbers. Rachel saw the PKM machine gunner at the same moment Fletcher exposed himself. The machine gunner was setting up on the eastern ridge, 800 meters out. Perfect angle on Fletcher's position. Rachel swung her rifle, found the gunner in her scope, centered the crosshairs. Her knee spasmed, a violent involuntary muscle contraction. The rifle shifted, just an inch, just enough. She fired. The bullet went wide, sparked off rock 6 inches from the machine gunner's head. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just settled in behind his weapon and opened fire. The PKM roared, a long, sustained burst, 7.62 rounds hammering out at 600 rounds per minute. Fletcher's body jerked. Once, twice, three times. He fell from the wall, 20 feet down to the ravine floor. Man down, Fletcher's hit. Lieutenant Maddox moved, running across open ground, bullets kicking up dust around his feet. He reached Fletcher, grabbed him, started dragging him back to cover. Rachel worked the bolt, chambered another round, found the machine gunner again. This time her knee held. This time the shot was true. The gunner's head snapped back. The PKM went silent. 96 rounds, but Fletcher was down. Rachel could see Maddox working on him. Chest compressions, trying to stop bleeding, that wouldn't stop. She'd missed. 6 inches. That's all it had taken. 6 inches because her knee had spasmed at the exact wrong moment. The radio crackled. Overwatch, we need you down here. Fletcher's bad. Real bad. Rachel looked at her position. The 10-meter climb down. With her destroyed knee, it would take minutes she didn't have. Negative, I can't climb down. My knee's gone. Then we're bringing him up. 2 SEALs carried Fletcher up the rock wall, grunting with effort, exposing themselves to fire. But the enemy had pulled back after the Claymore detonations. Regrouping. They laid Fletcher beside Rachel's position. His tactical vest was soaked red. 3 hits, chest, abdomen, shoulder. Rachel looked at Maddox. How bad? Bad enough. Maddox's hands were covered in blood, applying pressure, trying to slow the bleeding. But there was too much. Too many holes. Fletcher's eyes were open, confused, scared. Ma'am, did we hold? Rachel moved to him, ignoring her knee, ignoring everything except this dying boy. We held Marine. You did good. The line didn't break. I got hit. You did, but the position's secure. Your team's safe. You did your job. Fletcher smiled, a weak, fading thing. My mom's going to be pissed. I promised her I'd come home. Tell her when you see her, you're going to be fine. The lie came easy, had to, because 24-year-olds shouldn't die knowing they're dying. I'm cold. Shock. It'll pass. Rachel took his hand, held it. What's your mom's name? Sarah Fletcher, lives in Wyoming. Cheyenne. What does she do? Teacher, 3rd grade. She's really good at it. Kids love her. I bet they do. Tell me about her. What's she like? Fletcher talked. About his mother, about Wyoming, about the ranch where he'd grown up. His voice getting weaker. The pauses between words getting longer. Rachel held his hand, listened, made encouraging sounds, pretended not to notice when his grip weakened. Ma'am, I'm here, Dylan. Did I do okay? You did great, better than great. Your mom would be proud. Tell her I thought about her at the end. I will, I promise. Fletcher's eyes fixed on something Rachel couldn't see. His chest rose once more, fell, didn't rise again. Maddox checked for a pulse, shook his head. Rachel closed Fletcher's eyes, gently, like he was just sleeping. The second death caused by her failures. Connor 3 years ago, Fletcher now. Both died while she watched through a scope. Both died because she wasn't good enough when it mattered most. Maddox looked at her, his face hard, but not accusing, just tired. Not your fault. I missed the shot. The machine gunner, I had him. My knee spasmed and I missed. Then it's the knee's fault, not yours. That's not how it works. It's exactly how it works. You gave us a chance, Rachel. Fletcher knew the risks. We all do. He died fighting. That's more than most people get. Rachel wanted to believe him, wanted to accept the absolution, but the weight was still there, heavy, growing, 96 rounds, approximately 20 enemy fighters remaining. 28 minutes to extraction, and 1 more ghost to carry. The enemy regrouped faster than Rachel expected. 15 minutes. That's all they gave the SEALs to breathe. The second assault came without smoke, without subtlety, just a direct push. 20 fighters rushing the choke point, accepting casualties, trying to overwhelm through sheer numbers. The SEALs met them with disciplined fire. Rachel engaged from above, dropping targets, buying seconds. She fired in controlled bursts now. 2 shots, 3 shots. Displacement. The enemy was too numerous for single precision kills. She needed to create chaos, disrupt their coordination. A fighter with grenades. Down. His explosives detonated when Rachel's round hit them. Took 2 others with him. 93 rounds. A squad leader directing his team. Down. His men scattered without leadership. 92 rounds, an RPG team setting up. She took the gunner. Then the loader who grabbed the weapon. 90 rounds. The enemy was pressing hard. Getting closer, the SEALs were burning ammunition, holding the line but barely. Then Rachel saw Garrett's position taking fire. Heavy fire. A full fire team concentrating on his ridge, suppressing him while another team moved to flank. Garrett's M40 went silent, either out of ammunition or pinned down. Rachel shifted her scope, found the flanking team, 4 fighters moving up Garrett's western approach, 60 meters from his position. She engaged, rapid fire, not waiting for perfect shots, just fast enough to break their advance. 87 rounds, 84, 81. The flanking team scattered, but one kept moving, determined, got within grenade range of Garrett's position. Rachel tracked him, led his sprint, fired. He went down, but the grenade was already in the air. The explosion was small. Fragmentation. But close enough that Rachel heard Garrett's grunt over the radio. Actual status. A pause, then Garrett's voice, strained. I'm hit, shoulder and upper chest, still functional. How bad? Bad enough. I can shoot, but I can't displace. Positions compromised. Rachel scanned the enemy. They'd seen Garrett's position light up from the grenade. Were maneuvering toward it now. 10 fighters at least. She keyed her mic. Brennan Garrett's position is about to be overrun. He's wounded. Can't move. Brennan's response was immediate. Maddox, take 3 men. Extract Overwatch actual. Everyone else suppressive fire on that ridge. The SEALs executed. Professional. Disciplined. Pouring fire onto the enemy, advancing on Garrett, while Maddox's team sprinted across open ground. Rachel covered them, dropping any enemy fighter who exposed themselves. 81 rounds became 75, became 70, became 65. Maddox reached Garrett, got an arm under him, started dragging him back toward the ravine. An enemy fighter appeared on the ridge, a K-47 coming up. Aiming at Maddox, Rachel fired. The fighter dropped. 64 rounds. Another fighter, same ridge. Rachel fired. Miss, adjusted, fired again. 62 rounds. Maddox got Garrett into the ravine. The team laid him against the wall, applied pressure bandages. 2 wounds, right shoulder, upper left chest, missing the lung but close. Bleeding heavily but not arterial. He'd live, if they could hold long enough for extraction. Rachel's radio crackled. Garrett's voice, weaker but still functional. Ghost sight, I've got movement on the ridge behind the enemy position. Elevated, directing the assault. She swung her scope, found the spot Garrett described. And there he was, Eric Sutton, standing on a rock outcrop, radio in hand, coordinating his forces with hand signals. 640 meters from her position. Stable position. Clear shot. Perfect conditions. Rachel centered the crosshairs on his chest, started her breathing cycle, then stopped. She thought about the last shot, the miss, the rush, the emotion overriding training. She thought about Fletcher, dead because she'd missed when it counted. She keyed her mic. Overwatch actual. I have eyes on Sutton. Grid November Victor 7731. Range 640 meters. Elevated position. Clear shot. Confirmed. I see him. Garrett's voice was strained from the wounds but steady. Rachel took a breath, swallowed her pride. Her rage, her need for vengeance. Your shot, Colonel. I'll spot for you. A pause, then Garrett's voice, softer despite the pain. Confirm. You want me to take it? Affirm. My position's more stable for suppression, fire. You've got the angle for the precision shot. I'll call the wind. Another pause. Longer. Copy. On your count. Rachel watched Sutton through her scope, measured the wind, read the mirage, calculated the shot the way she'd done 10,000 times before. Wind 3 miles per hour left to right, temperature dropping, humidity rising, adjust 2 mils left from center mass. Confirmed, ready when you are. Rachel steadied her breathing, watched Sutton, waited for the moment when he'd be still, when the wind would calm, when everything would align. 3, 2, 1, send it. Garrett's M40 cracked. A single shot. Clean. Professional. Through her scope, Rachel watched Sutton's head snap sideways. He dropped off the rock. Fell 12 feet. Didn't move, time. Target down, name, Garrett said quietly. Rachel felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just emptiness. Sutton was dead. But Connor was still dead. Fletcher was still dead. And Draven was still out there. Still untouchable. Good shot, Colonel. You called it. I just pulled the trigger. The enemy assault broke after Sutton's death, without leadership, without coordination. The fighters pulled back, retreating to defensive positions. The ravine went quiet except for the moans of wounded and the crackle of radios. Brennan's voice carried across the position. All elements status report. Count your ammunition. Check your wounded. Extraction is 15 minutes out. 15 minutes, they'd held. Rachel slumped against the rock wall. Her knee was swollen to twice its normal size. The joint completely destroyed. She'd need surgery, months of recovery, maybe permanent damage. Worth it, if the SEALs made it out. If the mission succeeded. Worth it. The sound of rotor blades echoed off the canyon walls. Growing louder, Brennan's radio crackled. Hammer 1, this is Wildcat 1-3. Extraction is on station. Ready to receive passengers. Pop smoke when secure. Brennan looked up, squinted at the sky, then his expression changed. All elements hold smoke. Something's wrong. Rachel grabbed her scope, scanned the sky, found the helicopter. A Black Hawk. Right model, right approach vector. But something was off. The crew positions were wrong. Door gunners sitting too high, too tense, weapons oriented inward instead of outward. The call sign was wrong. Wildcat 1-3 should be a Chinook, not a Black Hawk. And the approach was too aggressive, too fast, not the careful insertion of a friendly extraction. Rachel keyed her mic. Hammer 1, that's not our bird. Repeat, that is not our bird. Take cover. How do you? Take cover now. Brennan didn't argue. All elements weapons free, incoming hostile. The Black Hawk flared over the ravine. The door gunners opened fire. M240 machine guns, 7.62 NATO, 600 rounds per minute each. Bullets stitched across the ravine floor. 2 SEALs went down instantly. One clutched his chest. The other's head snapped back. The SEAL team returned fire. Disciplined bursts aimed at the helicopter's vulnerable points. Maddox got a burst into the tail rotor assembly. Sparks flew. Black smoke started trailing. Rachel brought her rifle up, aimed at the pilot, 700 meters. Moving target. She fired. The windscreen starred. The pilot jerked the controls. The helicopter lurched. 61 rounds. She fired again. Engine cowling. The turbine shrieked. More smoke. 60 rounds. The Black Hawk banked hard, breaking off the attack, limping away over the ridge, trailing smoke and hydraulic fluid. It disappeared behind a peak. Seconds later, a column of black smoke rose into the sky. The sound of the impact carried across the mountains. Muffled, distant, final. The ravine went silent. Rachel lowered her rifle, looked at the 2 dead SEALs. Young men, early 20s. 4 dead total. Fletcher, these 2, and 1 more who died during the initial contact. 4 out of 12. The real extraction arrived 20 minutes later. Correct call signs, correct approach. Medics ready. They loaded the wounded first. Garrett with his shoulder and chest wounds. 3 other SEALs with various injuries. Then the dead. Body bags that seemed too small. Rachel was carried to the helicopter on a stretcher. Maddox pressed something into her hand before they loaded Fletcher's bag. Dog tags. Keep them, Maddox said, until you can give them to his mother. Tell her what you told him, that he did good. The helicopter lifted off. The ravine fell away below, a killing ground where good men had done terrible things to survive. Rachel closed her eyes. Let the medic work on her knee, felt the morphine dull the pain. Somewhere in the helicopter, Garrett sat with pressure bandages on his shoulder and chest. He'd survive. Brennan sat beside him. 10 men remaining, 8 mobile, 2 wounded, 83% survival rate. Better than most. Worse than he'd wanted. 4 weeks later, Rachel sat in a hospital room at Walter Reed. The surgery had gone well. The knee would heal. But full function was questionable. Colonel Garrett entered, out of uniform. Civilian clothes. His right arm in a sling. The shoulder wound healing but still restricted. He sat beside her bed. Didn't speak for a long moment. Congressional investigation concluded, he finally said. General Draven is retiring with full pension and benefits. No charges filed. Rachel had expected this, but hearing it still hurt. Sutton's body. Private military contractor. No official connection. Industrial accident. In the fake extraction, helicopter. Mechanical failure. Under investigation. Rachel closed her eyes. Connor died for nothing. Fletcher died for nothing. No, Garrett's voice was firm. They died fighting. They died protecting each other. That's not nothing. Draven gets away with murder. This time. But I've got the evidence. Someday it'll matter. He pulled 2 folders from his briefcase. SEAL Team 7 requested you as their designated marksman. And I'm starting the Overwatch Initiative, training program for precision shooters. I need a senior instructor. Rachel looked at both folders. I can't do both. SEAL operations require full capability. I don't have that. Then choose teaching. Rachel shook her head. No, I choose both. Limited duty with the SEALs, planning, training. Between deployments, I teach at Overwatch. Garrett raised an eyebrow. That's not one of the options. Then make it an option. You need someone who knows when to break protocol. I'm breaking it now. A smile crossed Garrett's face. Connor said you never did anything the easy way. Connor was right about a lot of things. 6 months later, Rachel stood at the Overwatch Initiative training range. Virginia countryside, mountains in the distance. A young SEAL candidate struggled with an 800-meter shot in shifting wind. Marcus Webb, 23 years old. You're fighting the wind, Rachel said. Stop trying to predict it. Read it. Feel it. Webb lowered his rifle, frustrated. I've been trying for an hour. It keeps shifting. Wind shifts. You don't control it. You respond to it. She knelt beside him. Her knee protested but held. Look at the grass halfway to target. See how it's moving different. Webb studied the terrain. Yeah, like there's a second wind current. Good. So what does that tell you? That my calculator is wrong. Exactly. Split the difference. Compensate for both. Webb raised his rifle, made adjustments, fired. The bullet flew true, struck center mass. I made the shot. You made the shot. Now do it again until your body knows without thinking. Webb gathered his equipment, headed for the barracks. Footsteps approached. Garrett, moving with a slight limp now. The shoulder healed but restricted. He's improving, Garrett said. He's impatient. So are you. Impatience becomes ambition if you channel it right. They stood together, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. News on Draven, Rachel asked. Retired to Florida, living well. The words hurt, but Rachel had learned to live with hurt. Someday, she said quietly. Someday, Garrett agreed. He pulled out a photograph. A young woman in marine dress blues, sniper rifle across her chest. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez, graduated from our first advanced course, top of her class, already deployed. Rachel studied the photo, saw her own determination reflected back. The first. There will be more. That's the legacy, Rachel. Not the shots you make, the shots you teach others to make. After he left, Rachel drove north, to the cemetery where Connor was buried. She stood at his grave, same spot she'd visited every month for 3 years. I killed Sutton, she whispered. Garrett pulled the trigger, but I called the shot. He's dead, Connor. But Draven walks free. The wind rustled through the trees. No answer. Rachel pulled out Fletcher's dog tags. She'd given the originals to Sarah Fletcher, kept copies for herself. I'm teaching now. Like you taught me, it's not redemption. Just purpose, was. She set the dog tags on the headstone. Then she noticed her wedding band, still on her left hand, the ring Connor had put there 8 years ago. She'd worn it so long, she'd stopped noticing. Rachel pulled it off, hung it on the chain with Fletcher's tags, set them both on the headstone. I'm not carrying this anymore. Not the ring, not the guilt. I'm carrying forward, making sure no one else carries what I did. She touched the headstone. Cold granite. I miss you every day, but I can't stay frozen. Can't keep punishing myself for being alive when you're not. The sun was setting, orange and gold across the cemetery. Rachel walked back to her truck, limping. The knee would never be right, but it worked. She had papers to grade, lesson plans to write, young shooters to train, a rotation with the SEAL team in 3 weeks. A future. Not the one she'd planned, but the one she'd earned through blood and pain and loss. Rachel Hartwell had survived. The truck started. She drove away from the cemetery, away from the past. In the rearview mirror, the sun disappeared behind the mountains. But ahead, the road stretched into darkness, lit only by headlights. Unknown, uncertain, exactly where Rachel needed to be. She'd spent 3 years looking back. Connor would have told her to look forward, to trust the road even when she couldn't see what was coming. Fletcher had trusted her in his last moments, had believed her when she said he'd done good. Maybe it was time to believe it herself. The highway stretched ahead. Rachel drove into the night, not toward morning, just toward the next mile, the next day. The next student who needed to learn that sometimes you miss and sometimes you make the shot that matters. Connor had taught her that. Fletcher had reminded her, and Rachel would make sure the next generation learned it too.